Okay. This is gonna be a weird one. I can think of a bunch of massive mascots known worldwide as representation for either just specific companies or entire brands. Names like Bart Simpson, or Mickey Mouse, or Spider-Man, just to name a few. You have entire media empires characterized by one iconic image, and in some cases, the entire media form in itself. You think about comic books, you think about Batman and Superman. You think about animation, and you think of those cute little pink-haired anime girls. You think about video games, you think about, well, people like John Halo, who doesn't afraid of anything. But few resonate with as wide an audience as one particular character. Norm the Gnat was invented back in 1972 by comic strip artist and professional e-boy Jimothy Davis. And the strip's lack of inherent quality or popularity made him step back and go, I wonder what's really popular with the kids. The exact history of Garfield's lineage has been gone through with a fine-tooth comb by much better YouTubers than I. Other, more popular, better YouTubers like Quinton Reviews, for example. Check his stuff out, it's actually pretty amazing. This is how I even know about Norm the Gnat in the first place. That doesn't explain why such a fat, lazy, orange cat has garnered such attention and such respect and a beloved presence in our lives and on the internet. But in being recently unemployed, I've taken it upon myself to think about nonsense like this and a bunch of other bullshit.
He's my main cat, Garfield. That's me. Buzzing little ears on the top of his head. Eyelids hanging down like he just got out of bed. A bustin' dialect, he's a cat, and I know that. Even with the sounds, he can really get down. Same with the word he spells disaster. But Garfield's a cat and remains the master. Double rabble babble, he's a cat, and I know that. But sticking with the fact, we can take you on the back. He's so fat, and he loves a lasagna. Eating it whole with the touch of Parmesan. Garfield and friends, here they come, here they come, here they come.
So currently, on my phone, I have approximately, well over 500 saved individual Garfield pictures. I save them on site without question. I don't have any guidelines or boundaries or anything, but luckily I haven't been sent or stumbled across things that are too terribly explicit. I know those exist. I know those are out there. Don't at me. Speaking of that, I get tagged in Garfield pictures almost constantly on Discord and on Facebook and through my small circles of friends. Everybody seems to know that I am the Garfield guy. My love of Garfield in these small circles is really well known, and that's just sort of the persona that I've taken upon myself off of what started as a little joke. Cut to well over a year later, and I refer to myself pretty much as an appendage, a limb, an arm of the gargantuan and infinite elder god fandom we refer to only as Gar!
I'm sorry, John. I was just so hungry.
Garfield sits in this interesting place, this juxtaposition of relatability and attainability. This is something that I have seen across the internet, and especially on websites like Tumblr, referred to as a big mood. He sleeps, he eats, he doesn't catch mice, he bullies his fellow pet Odie, and of course he pressures his owner into feeding him things that are obscenely unhealthy and nowhere near good for a cat. Most importantly, he hates Mondays. It's not exactly the catchphrase I would use to describe Garfield. There are a few others that I have in mind.
Whoever invented Christmas trees should be drug out into the street and shot.
He gets talked about randomly during little bits at events like EVO 2019, a massively world broadcast live stream event for the tip of the top of the iceberg for fighting games worldwide.
Yes, Big Bird representing the United Arab Emirates.
Yes.
Hailing from Abu Dhabi, the place I knew only as where Garfield, the curmudgeonly cat, would try and package Odie off.
Was not expecting a Garfield reference here in Top 8, but you know
You
what?
never expect the Garfield
Hey,
reference.
you know what? All of us do hate Mondays after Evo, right? So there you go.
And it doesn't seem to stop there. His influence is legendary, it's constant, it's far-reaching. These points are all but some of the facets of the incredibly complex history and personality of Garfield, and over the last 42 years, Jim Davis has just been raking it in. He struck gold designing this guy. There's multiple TV shows, comic strip, compilation books, movies, a restaurant franchise with locations in Dubai and Toronto. That's ridiculous. And those are just a few of the intellectual property expansions that he has seen in the last 40 years. Side note, I have an interesting fact I'd like to share about Garfield before I really get into the analysis. Garfield in the cartoons was originally voiced by Lorenzo Music, and Lorenzo Music has a bunch of other voice talent roles, including Peter Venkman on the Ghostbusters cartoon. Peter Venkman in the Ghostbusters movie was played by Bill Murray, and in the movies for Garfield, Garfield is played by Bill Murray. It's like they have this little... No, you don't... Okay, well, I'll get on with the rest of it. Let's go. Garfield has inundated his fans and the general public with sheer volume of media, things to consume, and literally some things to consume. There are video games. There are mods to play as Garfield in other video games. Horror genre entries, fan comics, fan art, crossovers, edits. The list just keeps going on. There's something about Garfield that draws everyone in. Whether or not you have a personality on the internet, you are a fan of Garfield almost from birth. And even through the unattainable majesty of the Garfield property, the Garfield cinematic and media universe, all these various forms and bits and pieces, what exactly draws us to him? Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that in order to reach self-fulfillment at the top of the pyramid, we need a base, a certain number of other needs in order to build the steps to get to that point where we can be self-actualized. There's a bunch of things from top down that are the building blocks of ourselves that allow us to be us. First up, at the bottom, you have your physiological needs. Those are the cornerstone of self-fulfillment, and they're what should be basic human rights. The ability to eat, sleep, and be warm. Garfield lives in a house with an owner who absolutely loves him. Or, well, two, depending on if you want to count Lyman as still alive, but this is getting into territory that it's sort of Garfield deep lore, although not necessarily. I'm getting off track again. Garfield has constant access to his fridge, his bed, and every amenity that he could ever possibly need. As a pet, even if he is sentient or can communicate telepathically with everybody else around him, he can't have his own job, and therefore he must be taken care of by John daily. Garfield has a position that we all sort of want. We all just want to be sort of cared for. We don't ever want to have to want for again. We'd all love to have food and warmth and water and everything that we could need, but because of life, society, and because of privilege, not all of us have that ability to attain even these things. Some of us are more privileged than others. Some are broke. Some are poor. Some are starving. Some are between jobs, like myself. To have access to any of these physiological needs would make any life intrinsically better. Newspapers are widely available, and in the comics section where we would like to find some small amounts of entertainment to distract us from the horrors of everyday life, Garfield has all these things. We can relate to him as a protagonist because we want him to succeed in the same ways that we want to succeed, even on the most basic and minute level. He gets to be fulfilled, and vicariously, we can be fulfilled. Up on the next tier, we have safety needs, which include security and, well, safety, of course. Garfield has a home, his bed is always easily available. Garfield has somewhat of a weakness, however, something that gives him anxiety when it's not directly near him. Garfield absolutely adores his stuffed bear, Pookie. When John puts him in the wash, or subsequently disappears from Garfield's bed, or sometimes even his sight, he panics. It's a natural instinct, honestly. It's his comfort item. He needs that in order to feel secure. Even if he has all of these other needs, it's something that he deems necessary. Pookie is as much of a friend as anybody else in the strip. Pookie is the platonic ideal of what a safe space could be. It'll assure Garfield in every situation, and it'd be really nice if we all had that kind of thing, wouldn't it? I mean, I'm sure you have something like this as a viewer, something that you can latch onto as a character or a blanket or a stuffed toy or something of that nature in order to feel better about yourself or your surroundings, or if you just really need a hug. It's so very human of us and of Garfield to want to find a safe space when we have these anxieties. And these things that make us feel better might seem unimportant or innocuous to an outsider. Hence, when John washes it, Garfield panics. He might not necessarily realize that taking Pookie away from Garfield can put him in such a state. When Pookie is unavailable to Garfield, he feels incredibly vulnerable, and we can all relate to that. Third tier up is about belongingness and love needs, and Garfield sort of has these in spades. There's always been a claim that Garfield hates Mondays. He says it himself, and it's become a staple line used to describe anything bad going on in his life. Usually it's the problem because it is Monday. While I resonated with that myself as a child because it meant I couldn't continue to play Garfield Caught in the Act on my Sega Genesis for another week, it's something a little more selfish and a little more longing in Garfield's case. John works on Mondays. Mondays through Fridays specifically, he probably works a 9 to 5 as his job as a cartoonist. So for the Saturdays and Sundays, he gets to spend that time with John. Yes, he berates him. Yes, he makes fun of his lack of a love life. Yes, he continually kicks Odie off of the table. He does these to seek attention. When you come home after a long day of work, your dog, or sometimes your cat, or any other animal that you might have, might get really excited seeing you come home. To you, that animal is part of your life, another thing to take care of during the day, another thing to put attention and love into. But for the animal, you mean everything. To Garfield, John is love. And whether Lyman or Doc Boy or John's on-again, off-again girlfriend Liz, they're not John. They're not the one who originally picked up Garfield, who decided to give him all of the love he deserves and expects as a member of the family. Sometimes it might be nice to have a John in your life. As an addition to this, Garfield is a really simple cat. His needs in order to feel accomplished or prestige or any kind of self-fulfillment are relatively low compared to others. Usually he doesn't need more than a lasagna or to sit on John's lap. He likes to sleep in and kick Odie off the table, and these things bring him fulfillment. They bring him joy. They validate him as a character and as a sentient being. But all of this gets turned upside down when you add one thing to the mix: Nermal. According to possibly Nermal themselves, Nermal is the world's cutest kitten. Nermal is absolutely adorable. Everybody loves Nermal. Everybody loves Nermal. Everybody gives Nermal all the attention when Nermal's around. Nermal can do no wrong, it seems, and despite Nermal's best efforts to get in good with their idol, Garfield absolutely despises them. I used to always agree with the idea that Garfield wanted to send Nermal off to Abu Dhabi, but I wasn't precisely sure why. But when your entire need for fulfillment, for accomplishment, is gatekept by this small, squishable, gray blob of a cat, you're no longer the best cat in the house. Those are Garfield's hard-earned head pets, damn it, cutest kitten in the world or not. In conjunction with this, The top of the pyramid, the capped self-fulfillment, is all based around achieving one's potential. You can't be the best cat in the house if there's another cat. And you know what? Why not take the utmost pride in kicking Odie off the table? Wow, Garfield, you sure ate the hell out of that lasagna. There's another little bit to the self-fulfillment thing. Garfield tends to speak directly to the viewer. A lot.
After 7 seasons, we've pretty much said everything you can say in this spot.
But ultimately, his antics are not just there to entertain himself. They're here to entertain you. And on both the inside and the outside of the comic strip, Garfield has reached this level of self-fulfillment that not a lot of other things can say that they have as well. Maybe Calvin and Hobbes, but that's a different video entirely. Garfield is a multi-million-dollar franchise, a massive success story for Jim Davis. He's been doing it for 42 years. Selling the rights off to do other things just gets him more money. He will never want for anything again. Garfield is basically a metaphor for Jim Davis's own success, for his ability to draw and to write and to sell and to make and to be. Garfield is a household name, as recognizable as Mickey Mouse, and to be able to say that is ridiculous. Honestly. Imitators may come through and try to usurp the king, but glory to the majesty of the Garfield Empire, there will be no way that throne will be emptied by anybody else. That empire is as strong today as it was 42 years ago. Here's some evidence.
If you're ready for the greatest...
Hi, I'm Robert Cothey. My wife, Kathy, and I own the website lovesgarfield.com. Lovesgarfield.com features only a small part of Kathy's extremely large Garfield collection. We were also the host of the 13th Annual Garfield Collectors Convention on Long Island, New York in 2011.
This is lovesgarfield.com, which as far as I can tell hasn't been updated since about 2014. This is the largest single collection of Garfield merchandise, including over 6,000 individual unique pieces, and as a total, over 11,000 pieces, including the duplicates and whatever else. Collectors from all around the world marvel at a collection this size. Honestly, like, I would love to live in this house. It's brilliant, it's insane, it's magical. Almost. To be able to be surrounded by something that you love so very much is ideal. It's unrealistic, honestly. That is an insane amount of space dedicated to Garfield, to any hobby at all. I can't imagine the amount of money that was spent on any of these pieces, and I can't help but be jealous. There's honestly some kind of world wonder in that of Garfield that you can't really put your finger on. Something that just oozes want and attainability. And clearly, it's a franchise that is insanely marketable. It's been generating millions of dollars. People want to buy merchandise. People want to be inundated with the Garfield brand. This is an extreme case, but it could be you tomorrow. But that doesn't even have anything to say about how he's viewed online.
It's sad, but reading Garfield anthologies obsessively was the only thing that made me feel normal, and it eventually took on something of an erotic fixation. I drew pictures of Garfield with a woman's, think Pamela Anderson circa 1991, body, and Garfield's head. This Garfield-Pam hybrid, these drawings eventually evolved into erotic fanfiction starring Garfield and myself. I killed off John in a jealous rage. I didn't touch Odie. I don't mind if he watches. If Jim Davis ever saw these drawings, I think he would literally fucking die. Which would you prefer? Pamela Anderson body and Garfield head, or Garfield body and Pamela Anderson head?
Oh no, I've already killed myself in this situation. Pam head, Garfield body, but Lorenzo music voice. I have a thing with the real Ghostbusters, so I think that would be enough to get me through it. And also,
you're worried about finishing?
The memetic nature of Garfield's presence on the internet is incredibly curious. He crosses over with almost every fandom that I can think of, whether it's due to Photoshop or some kind of fan editing. And it serves as the backdrop for countless parodies. There have been dozens of remixes on the Garfield formula. multiple outlets have taken him on as some kind of topic, and every conversation or bit that they do based around Garfield seems to be some kind of solid gold. It transcends being a successful comic and makes everything else seem to be some kind of success as well. Take Garfield minus Garfield, for instance. Back in 2008, creator Dan Walsh had the brilliant idea of removing the titular character from the comic that he resides in. This leaves John to talk and muse completely alone, which changes a lot of things about the comic. I highly suggest reading through this. It's incredibly enlightening. With the lack of Garfield as the straight man, the one in the center of the universe, there's this weird chaos about the remainder of everybody else. Conversations are odd and off-putting and one-sided. There's some insane happenstance that needs to happen when you remove the action point of certain things. And there's, let's just say, emotional outbursts. John appears to be unable to live alone, or at least be the single focal point of an entire strip. He needs and requires, as I said before, a straight man to bounce off of. This project exemplifies the working formula of a proper Garfield strip, and by removing him, it turns it on its head for this interesting subversion of the entire genre. The lack of Garfield leaves these little ripples through the rest of the world, and you can feel the space left behind. The feeling of reading these strips is comedic at best, and at worst, for the people inside the comic at least, is some kind of inescapable hell plane. It's incredibly isolating for the characters within, and you can kind of feel their plight. It's as if you got rid of, say, Ross from Friends, which I think the show would be much better off without him in general, but you know what I mean. And if you go back to the originals and can compare some side by side, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. It's bringing it back to some kind of balance. It's refreshing. This is a really interesting project, and I urge you to take a look at it if you've never read it before. Another such parody is Gorefield. Gorefield is this creepy, modular, The Thing-esque art project done by William Burke, and it goes off the rails in a weird horror way that you never really would have expected Garfield to ever want to take or exemplify. John has to survive in his house alone as the Garfield monstrosity continues to evolve, change, and chase after him, forever hungry, never able to be satiated. I'm sorry, John. YouTube user LumpyTouch took this idea and ran wild with it, turning it into this pixelated horror animation series called Garfield gameboy'd. Over these short 16-bit animations, John has to fight off and survive against this ever-evolving and changing creature that was once his pet cat. There's an interest in monsters and the need to turn mundane things into them on the internet, to take something that lies beneath, something innocuous, and turn it into something insidious. Turning Garfield in that way into some horror terror is basically a no-brainer, because a wholesome orange cat that kicks a dog off the table and eats lasagna can always be some kind of immortal god being hell-bent on the destruction of the universe, right? And it sort of makes sense, honestly, considering some of the really weird, darker bits of the Garfield lore.
We know you did, John. You want to know me that badly, right? Lyman will never see the light of day, you bastard.
Speaking of YouTube animations, there are a weird set of comics done by a bunch of different YouTubers. You'll find them if you search Garfield.
Stuffed in your face as usual.
I gotta have a good meal.
Originally done by PilotRedSun. These are MS Paint style comics that take John and Garfield completely off model, even from frame to frame. The animation is not always good, the designs are always historically terrible, and the voices chosen are wrong, to say the least. And over time, YouTube has taken these and evolved them, of course, into something else entirely. to become an almost YouTube poop-like experience. Like I said, this was taken by countless other people, but ChippleDipple really brought it home. This is a somewhat episodic series that at least takes the themes explored by each of the episodes and brings them into the next. There's noticeably better art and animation and consistency between scene to scene. Usually these episodes revolve around something like death, existentialism, and one's place in the universe. Ultimately, in the end, it all comes down to a chance meeting with God. Professional e-boy Jimmy Davis even makes an appearance. It culminates in this incredible club remix of the Garfield and Friends theme song with dozens of pictures splattered over it, done under the tag Garfarts. It is an almost religious experience. It's something to behold.
John, you want to head out?
Works for me.
But the weirdest Garfield bit of all has to be Lasagna Cat. Holy God, Lasagna Cat, blessed be thy name. Lasagna Cat is a 12-year-old YouTube channel that takes these Garfield comics and does them pretty much verbatim. There's a man in a Garfield suit or an Odie suit and a man dressed as John, and, well, they do the comics. And then they undo the comics. The channel was dead for about a decade, and then in 2017 it came back. When it did come back, it culminated in this 4-hour video that I can't explain, I can't spoil it for you. It's magical. The last 7 minutes are chilling, they're haunting, they are brilliant. This is some of the most expertly crafted content on YouTube in general. Like, not even related to Garfield. Like, it's incredible. This is something to behold. But don't just skip to the last bit, because there's context in the other ones, and you might have to watch some videos from over a decade ago. I don't know how I can convince you to watch this, but it's worth it, honestly. It has taught me some things that I wanted to learn about content creation and what anything can be and what anything can mean and what you can turn anything else into to mean anything else, whatever you'd like it to be. So, in that, Garfield can mean anything to anyone. Garfield can be anyone, anything, any form. Garfield has become this malleable clay that we can shape to our own desires. He is universal. He is ubiquitous. We immediately understand his wants and desires, and we can empathize and sympathize and want to be there with him, alongside him. We are Garfield. And Garfield finds a way to enter our minds and exit on the other side completely changed, completely different, whatever form that you wish it to be. Everybody can see what makes Garfield tick, and therefore everybody can make those little alterations to make the jokes or the content that they need. It's ultimately transformative, but it's also always just Garfield. Time, place, persona, form, none of it really matters. All are Garf, and therefore all shall always be Garf. It's as if a million different interconnected universes found one point to go and focus on to make this masterpiece of media. So when you read Garfield, you're not just reading Garfield. You become part of his world. And when you watch Garfield, you're not just a viewer. You become part of his friends.
We're ready to party!
And you know, there's something that I really have been putting off in relation to Garfield. Something that, even though I've talked about having wanted to do it before or mentioned it in passing or knowing that it exists in general, there's something I've always needed to do. I think today is finally going to be the day that I make my pilgrimage.
Add to cart. Add to Gart.
Should I get the lasagna?
No, it's $17.
But Garfield loves lasagna.
We're already getting a pizza. Richard, the smile on your face is giving me something.
Is it too much?
No, it's not too much.
Have you ever had just a moment in your life you had something that you could easily attain, and you've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, or just something that feels like an amazing sense of accomplishment. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right now, this is self-actualization. This is what I've been waiting for. To eat the thing, but I will give it a shot. Say I'm crazy. This tastes like the pizza that I had when I was growing up. So this pizza's not as bad as I expected it to be. It's not. It tastes a lot like my childhood. It could be better, but it could be a lot worse. But I think the most important thing is I'm doing this exactly as it should be. I'm sharing a pizza with Garfield and friends. I hope this weird little analysis was interesting enough for you to leave like a like or a subscribe or something. And if you really like this, well, I put a lot of work into it and a lot of time, and I really enjoy doing this. This is something I am really interested in pursuing. As I said before, I'm recently unemployed, and I would like to see if I can make a living doing something like this analysis, this interesting factoid business on YouTube. I have a Patreon down linked below that if you donated, that would be incredibly kind, and I would so very much appreciate it. And if enough people are interested in this, I might just make a sequel video relating to some other Garfield property, or I have an entire list of other topics that I can go through. I'd like to discuss this with some other fans, and you can always hit me up at my social media stuff, also linked down in the description below. And I don't know. This could be a lot of fun to pursue this on YouTube. Ultimately, if I did try to do another video, there is a really bad Garfield video game called Garfield Kart, and I have considered picking it up, and I have not yet. And I might do a 100% live stream where I don't stop until I get 100% of the game completed. I don't know how possible or viable that may be, but I love Garfield, why not? But anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and if I see you next time, well, there we go. I'm Richard, and hasta lasagna, don't get any on ya.